All right, hello everyone, and welcome. It is Tuesday, October 23rd, and welcome to Game Music Composition. My name is Chris Latham. I'm the course director of the class, and I'll be hanging out with you guys this month. We have our Tuesday and Thursday sessions each week. So, this first session is mostly an introduction to the class and an overview of the assignments, and we'll dive into the first week's assignments in a little while. But the overall focus and purpose of the class is to give you an opportunity to write music for a game soundtrack. We have different projects and assignments that will allow you to create all of the music and sound effects for a couple of custom projects. We will be introducing you to this side of the industry, showing you that your music is just as viable in a video game as it is in a wide variety of other media that you've been learning about through over the course of the degree program. We will be talking about what is unique and what is the same about making music for video games. What is the unique differences in the creation of a soundtrack, the overall composition and creation of the production of the music is very much the same. It is still music composition, it is still music theory, it is still recording and understanding all of your tools, your DAW, your synths and mixing and plugins, and being able to interpret a client's intentions of a piece of music and render it into an actual fully realized audio file that can be used for the game. So the creation of the music is very much the same, but what we do with all of that audio is certainly the part that is more unique and different. This is the part that we'll certainly be introducing to you over the course of the month. And we'll be talking about the process of not only the creation and composition of the music, but how do we take all of these audio files and do something with them technically to get them working in the game. So when somebody has a controller in their hand or they're playing on a computer with a mouse and a keyboard and they perform a certain action or a certain part of the story happens, how does the music react? How does the game even know how to switch and change the music? We will be talking about the interactive nature of music for games. The idea that you do not have ultimate control over the final version of what the player hears. Different games will provide different experiences with the audio. Some games will, each person that plays the game will have a different interaction with the music, a different experience through the game. So some games, that experience is only a little bit different or not at all different from one player to the next. But typically newer, more modern games, they feel wide open and with lots of variations and possibilities. And each player might have a wildly different experience as they go through and play the game. So we will talk about the fact that the player has ultimate the kind of the interactive control of what they are doing in the game. Whether they are aware of it or not, their actions in the game will change the music and what they hear. Some games it will be a little bit of change, and some games it will be wildly different. So we'll talk about how do you create music for a project where you don't ultimately know the final progression of the music. And we will talk about the interactivity and the nonlinear nature of the music, how it is formed, how it's set up, how it's formatted, and how you are going to use the WAV files in the game to create what hopefully will be a seamless experience for whoever plays it. So when you watch a film, when you're either in a movie theater or you're at home on the couch, you watch a 2 hour long movie, you are hearing the same 2 hour long audio file. There's one audio file that plays from beginning to the end of the movie that plays back the same way every single time. And the folks that make the audio, make the soundtrack, music, sound effects, dialogue for a particular movie, go over it and craft to make this perfect version. The video is cutting in and out, like it's stuttering. On your end, is the audio fine? Make sure that. Let's see. Well, I'll continue on. The audio is cutting out also. It freezes. Let's see. Freezes entirely and then comes back. I wonder. I mean, it could be my connection overall. Is it for short periods of time? Well, I'm going to, because it'd be hard to troubleshoot to see. I didn't hear half of it. Well, okay. That's a different story then. Let's see. All right, I'm going to pause the video. All right. So the topic I was referring to was discussing the interactive nature of the soundtrack and also discussing the nonlinear nature of the game soundtrack. So any other piece of music or media that you probably have consumed or written before previously is in a linear format. Most music, most media there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's an overall structure to the music with bars and beats and verses and choruses and beginnings and endings. And when you record a single for an album, there is a constant development of the music, and you listen to it over and over again, and you refine the perfect version that everybody hears on a big sound system in a club or in their car or off their speakers or something like that. But in a game, when you can play a game for, you can bring out your phone and play it for a couple of minutes. You can sit in front of a TV screen and play for a couple of hours. You can, many games go for, have 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 hours of content or more. If you get into online games, the games really don't ever end. They just have more and more content that occupies hundreds of hours of gameplay. So that doesn't mean that if you play a 100-hour long game, there is a 100-hour long video audio file that plays from beginning to end throughout the entire gameplay experience. The music for a video game exists in lots of pieces and parts. Pieces of music that play one time, that loop, that are a couple of seconds long or a couple of minutes long, and they arrange or rearrange themselves to create a seamless listening experience that hopefully the player isn't really aware of these different changes, but it emotionally responds to whatever the actions are on screen at any one time. So it feels like the music has been purposely crafted for whatever their experience is. So we'll be talking about all sorts of different aspects of the development of music for games, both the creative side and the technical side. We have our Tuesday sessions, which here we are in our first one. This one is a little bit different because I have all the introductory material And then each of the following Tuesdays, we will start doing peer review in the first half of the class. Each week, you have the opportunity to submit your compositions for review in the following session. I can do a live video review. If you are able to come to the live class, we can open up the microphone and talk back and forth and ask questions and discuss any sort of aspect of it. Or even if you aren't able to come to the live classes, there's a video archive of us going through everybody's variation, and you get to see not only your music and the feedback and response from everybody, but everybody else's variations. Everybody else's versions, and get a sense of what works and what doesn't work in the weekly compositions. So it's a great opportunity to get some information and comments about how your music is set up for that particular project for each week. So that's the first half of the Tuesday session. And then the second half, starting with this week, we'll discuss the new assignments coming up for each week. So here we will discuss our week 1 assignments coming up. Our Thursday sessions are open sessions for questions and more feedback on the upcoming assignments. If you as you progress through the week, getting your compositions together, you want to get some feedback before the deadline on each Sunday night, then submit it there and we can take a listen to it. You can just give me a Dropbox link or however we want to share it back and forth. Or come with questions or clarification, or if you want to ask, have discussions about the industry or any aspect of any of the topics that we discuss. We have that for Thursday. So all of your assignments, like I said, are due on Sunday, and we'll discuss them the following week. Again, my name is Chris Latham. I'm the course director of the class. I have my contact information here. Email and FSO messages are always the best way of interacting. I can certainly call on my phone. I am away from my desk phone on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you do call and leave a voicemail, then follow up with a email or a message on FSO, and I can respond to you quickly. Let's see, I've been with Full Sail for about 16 years now. I started out before my Full Sail days in studios and production studios doing music recording and production sound, location sound, music and sound effects and dialogue and commercial work for a variety of different clients. And then, started out in Full Sail in the studios over in the recording arts program. Then I sort of focused all of my audio energy towards games. About 10 or 12 years ago, games really kind of opened up in their technology, and you can get into how their audio insides work and get access to all sorts of different tools. So I've always had a passion for games and wanted to direct my efforts in that sort of direction. And since then, I've found way more success and opportunity in the games industry than I ever had in the music or television or like production sound side of things. So number of different projects. I have a game audio contracting company called Engine Audio. Beyond Full Sail, when we do all sorts of audio projects. Sharks and Divers have treated me well for the past many years. Been worked on a game called Depth, worked on a game called Last Tide, and now a new game coming out called Maneater. Multiplayer games, single player games. EA Sports is here in Orlando or the surrounding area, and so we've worked with them on a number of titles in years past. Worked on a couple of mobile titles and other various projects. So my focus has definitely been on the game side of things over the years. So whatever aspect of the industry you want to discuss, certainly reach out and we can kind of lead you in all sorts of different directions on those topics. I do have a couple of quick disclaimers about the class as we're getting started. First off is you don't actually have to be any good at playing video games to be successful in this class. You do not, I know folks coming through the class have a wide variety of experience with games. There are certainly those that eat, breathe, and live video games and are up on all the newest and latest games and technology and the game developers and the game hardware and have skills playing the games and are really interested in the industry, and I can certainly nerd out with you all day long about those topics. I'm definitely one of those folks, but I also know that there are those going through the class that haven't been playing video games since they were throwing quarters into Pac-Man or playing Minesweeper on their computer or whatever it is. And that is also perfectly valid for this class because your skills at playing a video game or being any good at playing video games are not important for your success in this class. What is important, what is required is your skills in the creation and production of music. All the skills that you've been gaining through this degree program up until this point, we'll just kind of focus that and direct that towards video games. And it's still music composition. It's still, as I mentioned before, being able to take a client's intentions with a project and actually render it into music. So while you are in the class, we will certainly immerse you in the games industry. We'll talk about all sorts of different aspects of it. We will talk about the game industry and getting a job and getting hired. One of the big purposes of this class is to expose you to this side of the industry and to hopefully pique your interest into these types of projects and want to explore it a bit further. As you've been going through the different classes and you're exposed to a songwriting avenue and or track, and then you learn a bit about music for commercial work and libraries and film and television, and now this month the focus is still those kind of building your music skills, but focusing it in the direction of a game and talking about what is the same and what is certainly the unique aspects of music for games. So number one is you don't actually have to be good at playing video games to be successful in this class. And number two here is you do not need to know how to program or code to work in the industry and to get started. I know a lot of folks, this is an early question that pops up is I know how to make music, I know how to do sound design, I know how to make audio, I'm interested in games, but I don't know how to program or code anything. Is this an issue getting into the industry? And it is by no means a requirement. There is a lot of varying experience levels or interactions with the technical side of how your music is actually working in the game. Typically, early on, you are often hired, in all cases, you are hired for your skills in making music. There's a whole team of programmers and coders and developers that know how to program and code, but can't write a song or make any music to save their games. So that's why they are hiring you. They enjoy your skills at making music, so they will hire you to do that. Now, in the beginning, you typically are just providing WAV files, providing the audio over to the client, and they take that music and they do whatever they want with it and put it in the game however they need to. And it's sort of like giving your music over to somebody else to mix. If they have a better idea of what they're doing, then that's great. But if maybe they don't understand the process or what the intention of the music is going to be, often a composer or a sound designer will start learning the technical tools, and there's still a lot of software that is there to guide a creative person like a composer or sound designer in through the process of getting their music set up for the game without ever touching a line of code. So it was pretty well determined early on that your best programmers are not going to be able to write your best music, and your best composers are not going to write code that's worth putting in a game. So, and this is the same thing for music, for sound effects, for art, for animation, 3D art, 2D art, characters, all of that. There's the whole creative side of things, and then there's the technical side of things. And while understanding the technical background and implication of what's actually happening in the game is certainly important, and being able to communicate your ideas to a technical person is certainly helpful. Your ability to sit down in front of a blank text editor and start pounding away code is certainly not the skill set that you are immediately hired for. So definitely want to introduce that part of it. 2 disclaimers. You don't actually have to be good at playing video games to be successful in this class, and you don't need to be able to code or program as a requirement to be involved in the industry. Goals of the class. So what is our focus? What is the expectations of the class? What are we here for? What's the intentions? All of that. Hold on just a sec. I'll take a quick pause. All right. The first goal here, of course, is to write music. The main purpose of all of your classes throughout this degree program is to give you an opportunity to compose music in a wide variety of situations and styles and contexts and all of that. So again, we're taking all of the skills that you have been building on through your previous classes and just applying it to games. So we have 2 games this month that you will be working on. They are, by the end of the month, you will have 2 fully working Mac games with your custom music and sound effects in them. They are yours to show off and distribute and add to a portfolio or a demo reel, and you will be charged with creating all of the music and all of the sound effects that are heard. So different games are in different styles, and they have a different approach to how the music works in the game. And so we'll discuss how everything functions and how it's going to be heard and played back. So certainly our first goal is to give you an opportunity to write music in all shapes and sizes and forms. Second, I have a very important concept in the class known as game research. Game research is very important, and that means you should be playing video games. You should be playing games and paying attention to those games, and paying attention certainly to the music and the sound effects, understanding why listening to the changes in the music. Why did the music change? What did you do in the game to make those changes happen? How does the music respond to characters or locations or actions in the game? And this is very important in all sorts of aspects of the entertainment industry. If you want to be involved in the music industry, you want to be a songwriter or an artist or a producer, you want to be the creating music for a music album, you should be listening to tons of different types of music, paying attention to all sorts of different styles and genres, and what is popular out there, and what is good, and why is good and popular not always the same thing, what sells a whole lot of copies, paying attention to, of course, the artists, their songwriting style, paying attention to the producers, the artists, the engineers, the recording studios, the publishers, the business side of it, a wide variety of topics to keep up with, because while working in the industry, all of your clients are going to be referring back to previous projects and previous albums and previous music, and having a sort of wide variety of information, and kind of this common language to utilize back and forth, because you both have experienced the same wide variety of music, gives you a lot to discuss. And so an artist or a client or whoever it is will say, hey, did you hear this on this album? Did you hear the kick drum sound here? Or did you hear the vocal style or effects or the songwriting approach? I really like that, and I would like to use that for my next album. Then you have this sort of common experience to pull from that you can utilize in whatever you're trying to do. If you're interested in the film industry, you should be watching a lot of film. You should be watching or paying attention to directors and producers and composers, the production studio, behind the scenes information, any sort of information you can get your hands on in the creation of a movie soundtrack, because directors speak in terms of previous films, and you have that sort of common knowledge between styles and approaches for a film soundtrack. It just so happens, if you're interested in the video game industry, you want to be a game composer, then you should be playing tons of games. You should be paying attention to those games. You should be paying attention to the soundtracks, paying attention to the music and the composer and the game developer and the technology and the game publisher and the business side behind it, to get a sense of what is happening in the industry and what your clients are wanting and responding to. And it's a little bit different in the film industry and the game industry than directly in the music industry, where in the music industry you're surrounded by typically musicians or music folks or folks that understand the language of music. And that can certainly vary in different degrees overall, but there is often this common language of music. But when you're working for a director or a game developer, they might not know one bit of music or an instrument or music theory or music production at all. So trying to interpret their intentions and ideas becomes its own challenge. So all this really boils down to you should be listening to tons of music, you should be reading tons of books, you should be watching tons of movies, you should be playing lots of video games, or whatever part of the industry you are interested in getting involved in, so that you have this background of information that you can pull from whenever it's needed. So certainly we'll be giving you lots of opportunities for playing video games this month. If anybody asks you why you are playing more video games, you tell them it is game research. It is you're investing time in the industry that you're interested in researching. So goals. Our final goal here is ultimately to learn something about all of this information. There is with all the music and all the video game playing, there is a lot of knowledge to be had. Like I mentioned earlier, there is the creative side of everything. There is the technical side of everything. There is the overall process. You'll realize as we go through the month that it is just having the music as WAV files in a folder is kind of half the equation. You will also be setting everything up and understanding how the music is fitting together and working together, and we'll kind of lead you through that process over the course of the month. So that is generally, in the large sense, what we're in store for through this month. Next here, we'll get into the assignments for week one. We'll get into, I'll start out on FSO and just kind of go over each week, and then we'll dive more specifically into these the assignments for this week. So let me take another quick pause. Just let me know, is the video broadcasting fine, or everything hopefully broadcasting better now? And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Hold on just a sec. All right, if you have not already, now would be a good time to go on FSO and download everything. I'm getting FSO loaded up here, I think. Oh. There we go. All right, so introduction section. You are probably very familiar with all of these pieces of info. Instructor contact info, FSO support contact info, professionalism policy, late policy. Just make sure you are familiar with all of those very typical pieces of information. Next here, week one. All right, so this week, all due Sunday. Your game composition, your first game this week is called a 2D platformer. I will be going into this in a whole lot more detail here in just a bit, but let me just download that. But yeah, download all the information. You'll get a copy of the video, you'll get a copy of the game, and you'll get a copy of the assignment PDF. I'll certainly be coming back to that here in a bit. Session preparation. This is a series of videos that discusses, I'll be saying a lot of the same stuff in the archive today, but it gives it in a little bit more detail. You can kind of save the videos. Helps kind of clarify other points of the game composition. Sound design. You will be creating all of the sound design for 2D platformer. There are 18 sound effects that you will need to create. Download these also. And after I discuss the 2D platformer, I will also discuss your sound design for this. Optional feedback and peer review. So this is the assignment each week that you can submit your game composition for feedback and peer review on the following Tuesday. It asks for your files to be delivered in a certain way, and I'll load them all up inside of Logic, and we'll go through them one by one. It's a discussion post, so you can check out everybody's work in the meantime, and then I'll just go take copies of it on Tuesday, and it's a great opportunity for everybody to get a chance to check out, not only get feedback on your own work, but I think it's also maybe even more valuable to see everybody else's versions of it. So they'll come up with things that you may not have even considered in your approach. So definitely encourage everybody to submit for the peer review. We will start that up next Tuesday. Tuesday and Thursday virtual classes. If you are here in the live class, you have obviously found this already. There's the link to our Tuesday and Thursday classes. Suggested reading and viewing. There is a textbook provided for the class and some chapters to read and some videos to watch. Oh, looks like my title's off. Videos and links and just more information along the same lines as the weekly topics that we discuss. So definitely check all of that out here in week 2. Week 2 has a very similar approach. Our second game of the month is a game called Angry Bots. I'll introduce it a little bit at the end of our class this afternoon. There is a series of videos in session preparation that discusses the assignment a bit further and kind of works the way through that. Sound design, you'll be creating all of the sound effects also for your Angry Bots composition. It is, the game's it's got robots and it's all futuristic, so it's a great opportunity for sound design. The peer review, the virtual class, and the suggested reading and viewing available for each week. In week 3, we start using software known as Wise to implement your music and sound effects into the game. So by the end of week 2, you will have created all of the music and sound effects for both games. And in week 3, we will start using Wise to implement it. This means to set it up so that it plays back in the correct order, in the correct way. It loops when it needs to, and it mixes properly between all the different files. So we'll get into that topic a bit more, and you'll use Wise to set up both 2D platformer and the Angry Bots games. There is a new composition for that week. You have a chiptune composition. So since we are talking about technology, we're kind of talking about where technology is currently. Then we kind of throw you back to where music for games was, kind of in the dawn of game audio, or at least starting with the original Nintendo system. So we have you compose, it's a linear composition, doesn't need to loop or be interactive in any sort of way, but you are utilizing the restrictions of the original Nintendo. So there are sound banks provided with sounds sampled from the original Nintendo and Famicom systems, and we'll discuss that the approach to that composition. Week 3, you have the optional feedback and peer review, you have the virtual class link, you have the suggested reading and viewing, and an additional Wise troubleshooting FAQ with answers to a lot of common questions. Week 4, final game capture. Week 4 is the kind of a summary and finalization of all of the work that you've been working on over the course of the month. It is, by this point, you will have your music and sound effects working in the game, and you will be setting up a couple different ways to show it off and demonstrate your work. Not only will you have the actual working game application, but you will also be creating a video game capture. And you will play, once you have all the music and sound effects set up and working, you will then do a screen recording of while you play the game and demonstrate all of the music and sound effects playing back. So you'll create videos that are about 1 minute to 2 minutes long, and the videos are often a very good way of showing and demoing the work that you've done. There's a discussion post where you can share your final game captures, and the Tuesday and Thursday virtual class link, the suggested reading and viewing, and then your final assignment here is final project delivery, which is all of the assets from the game project. So you'll turn in a link to your video, You'll provide screenshots and information kind of summarizing the overall experience of composing and creating sound effects for your game. So that's an overview of the class. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, make sure you've gone through and downloaded everything for week 1. Got access to that. Well, I guess I want that. Bring that back up. Do this. All right. So we have that. So that's FSO. As I mentioned before, you should have a copy of the textbook for the class, A Composer's Guide to Game Music. It's a great textbook for some kind of supporting and more detailed information on the topics that we discussed through the month. It is a very good approach in the discussion of music for games. It doesn't really get into the technical side of things because the technical elements change very quickly over the years, and so it really discusses the compositional aspects and the business side of things. So it's kind of great supporting information for our weekly topics. All right, so let's discuss our first game project here. We will discuss our 2D platformer game. Just here in the chat, has anybody had the opportunity to download the game and play it? Got an opportunity to check it out and see what the game is all about? It is hopefully pretty easy to play and get a sense of what's going on here. So when you, where'd this go? When you download everything, you get a copy of the game itself. You get a copy of this video of the game, and you get a copy of the assignment PDF. Just bring this up here. There we go. And bring this up here. And well, not yet. Let's see here. Let's see if this actually, you might be able to, no, you won't be able to hear it. I don't think I have that currently set up. Oh, wait, hold on. I think I can get the audio going here. Hold on. There it goes. All right. I'm going to let this video roll for a little bit, and then I'll come back and talk about our first game.
Bring it on. Keep it classy. I say, old bean. Keep it classy. Bring it on. Bombs away. Keep it classy. I say, old bean. Bring it on. Keep it classy. I say, old bean. Bring it on. I say, old bean. Bring it on. Keep it classy. Ow, 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 ow. I say, old bean.
All right. So, as you can see, it is a pretty lighthearted game. Doesn't take itself too seriously. It is, again, the game is called 2D Platformer.
Keep it classy.
Turn this down to make sure you can still hear me.
I say it'll be.
It's called 2D Platformer because it is a 2D game. You can go left and right and jump up and down, but you don't go into the game world in any sort of way. It is a platform game because you're running and jumping between different platforms. In this case, you are, for whatever reason, you are a bean with a monocle and a mustache and a top hat, and you have a bazooka, of course, and you are saving the, I guess, bean humanity from these invading red and green aliens.
Bring it on.
It is a kind of wacky idea, silly, doesn't take itself too seriously. Was probably might be a mobile game,
Keep it classy.
something you'd play on a phone or a tablet. It is meant for all ages, family-friendly kind of game and music
I say
overall.
it'll be.
So let's talk about how the music is set up. Well, actually, let me do this. Says here in the very beginning, it says powered by Unity. The game is built in the Unity game engine. If you play enough games out there, a lot of them, especially on maybe a phone or some mobile device, you might see this logo that says powered by Unity. It is from the Unity Games. There's a company out there called Unity Games. They make the Unity game engine, which is the tool that people use to make video games. It's kind of like saying I recorded my music or made my song in Pro Tools or Logic. Somebody makes a game in the Unity game engine. And this is a free demo project that they give out, and everybody can tear it apart and check out how everything works on the inside, and shows off how their tools work. And it's free for all sorts of purposes, and we can go in there and set up our own custom music and sound effects. Let me switch over to that PDF because that'll give us a lot of information specific to the assignment. So project overview gives a lot of kind of this overview information that I'm talking about the game. The game itself, like I mentioned, it's a 2D platformer game. 2D platformer games have a long pedigree in the games industry. Classics like Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, and Metroid were 2D platformer games, and up to modern varieties like Limbo, Braid, and Jetpack Joyride. So still very popular. Goes all the way back to the beginning of the games industry, but still very, very common, and gives us a really good opportunity for our music, kind of this introduction to how our music will be set up in the game. So you are a bean. It's set in London. You can tell because this is London Bridge. It has fallen down. Over here is Big Ben is busted up, and this is the London Eye. And so this is not a full game. Actually, this particular game doesn't have an ending. The score just goes up and up and up, and if you lose, then you lose the round, and it starts over again, and you take another crack at it. So this is very much like maybe the middle of a game, in the middle of production, where a game isn't made in any sort of order, like a film isn't shot in any particular. Well, I mean, there is an order, but it's not linear. It's not from beginning to end. So you would be given a particular level, and they say, okay, here's what's going on, and here's where everything's happening, and here are the characters. Go ahead and write some music for this particular level. It takes place in London. It's a kind of a sci-fi vibe to it, but it's still lighthearted. It could be campy. I have here musical style. So we leave the actual style of the music, the genre of the music, up to you. Since this is the first attempt at writing, more than likely, first opportunity to write music for a game, and there's a particular setup to focus on. We want you to be able to write music in whatever style you feel most appropriate and are comfortable with for this game. There are a couple of those influences that you can pull from. Since it is set in London, you could have sort of a British influence to it. There's also the sci-fi influence from the Alien Invasion. I've listed here Monty Python meets Mars Attacks, or Benny Hill versus the Body Snatchers. You can use those as influence. You don't have to go in that direction. You could. It should be fast-paced or up-tempo, energetic, so it kind of pushes the pacing of the game forward. Nothing too slow or laid back or like dark and depressing. And you want to keep up the energy for the pacing of the game. But if you want to have it be orchestral or hip hop or electronic or rock or any other variety of more acoustic or more electronic, that is certainly up to you. How to play. Hopefully the controls are relatively straightforward. Left and right will move you left and right. Spacebar will jump. And then left click will fire the bazooka. Right click, there are little parachutes, kind of power-ups that come down. You can right click on and drop bombs. Instrumentation, you do definitely have to have drums, bass, harmony, and melody. It doesn't need to be just limited to 4 instruments, but have a strong rhythm to keep pushing the pacing of the game forward. Have especially a strong melody that develops and utilizes the full number of bars for each cue that you're creating to develop a strong melodic idea. The melody is going to create the most variation and development to the music. Then the music, the harmony and the bass kind of is there to support what's going on in the melody and the rhythm. So you should probably have a strong melodic lead, a couple of instruments operating as the harmony, strong bass line, and a couple of layers of drums, or not, kick, snare, hi-hat, or other layers of percussion. All right, so next here is this asset list. This is probably the most important piece of information for everything, and it actually answers your question here. Here in the chat, we have to make 9 1-minute tracks in total. No, you are going to create 9 wave files for this composition, but they're not 1-minute tracks. The music for the game is divided up into intros, main loops, and endings. It's a very, very common approach for music in games. Sometimes it's known as start, loop, and stop. There's like a beginning, something in the middle that loops over and over again, and then an ending or resolution to everything. So we're also introducing a bit of randomization. So there are 3 intros, there are 3 main loops, and there are 3 endings. The intros are 2 bars long, the main loops are each 8 bars long, and the endings are 2 bars long. You should think about it as one composition that can be divided out into 9 pieces. So I'll explain how the music will work and how it will play back in the game. Everything is going to be 16-bit, 44.1 stereo files. The intros and endings only play one time, and then the main loops need to be set up to loop because they're going to play back in a random order. So this is how the files will play. When the game starts, your character kind of drops in onto the main platform. And when the game starts, the game says, or the computer says, okay, the game has started, what do I do now? And the game looks at the code and says, okay, there should be 3 intro files. Randomly choose one of those and play it. And we, as the composer, have set it up to be 2 bars. You can be at any tempo you want. Now, granted, a little faster tempo or more up-tempo kind of feel definitely helps. But everybody could write at different BPMs and tempos. The game doesn't care about how long the file is. All it knows is when the first 1 or 0 starts, like when the first bit starts and the last bit ends. And it plays from beginning to end on each one of these files. So it randomly chooses, let's say it chooses intro 2, and it starts playing that music. So the game starts, intro 2 plays, and it plays for 2 bars. At the end of those 2 bars, the computer says, okay, that file is done now. What do I do? And the game looks at the code and says, all right, there should be 3 main loop files. Randomly choose one of them and play it. Now, you need to make sure that all of these files are in the same tempo, the same time signature, and in the same key, so that it sounds like one cohesive piece of music all playing back. And they'll be set up so they kind of butt up against each other and play back to back to create a seamless piece of music, so that whoever's playing the game never hears any sort of pauses or gaps in the playback of music. It's also very important to understand that intro 1 does not necessarily or does not always go to main loop 1, and which does not always go to ending 1. It is completely random. So it goes to intro 2, it ends and says, all right, I'm going to choose main loop 3 and play that for 8 bars. It plays the first intro, then it goes into the main loop. When it reaches the end of that 8 bars, the computer says, okay, I've reached the end of that file. What do I do next? Well, as long as the game is still being played, then it says, all right, well, choose another main loop and play that one. All right, well, it's going to choose main loop 1 and play that for 8 bars. And then it plays through main loop 1, reaches the end of that, and it goes and says, all right, randomly choose another one. Then it chooses main loop 3 again. Then it goes to main loop 2. Then it goes back to 1. Then it goes to 2, then it chooses main loop 3. Let's say it chooses main loop 3 times in a row. Because it's completely random, it can play the same file over and over again. That's why the files have to be set up to loop. So as long as these 3 files are 8 bars long, in the same tempo, same key, same time signature, effectively playing the same, not the exact same chord progression, but basically 3 variations on a similar idea, then it will feel like one seamless piece of music that plays back as the game is being played. And the player will hear these 3 main loops as the main piece of music. While they're playing the game, for the most period of time, they will be hearing these 3 main loops playing back. So the game starts, it randomly chooses an intro, and it plays that back. The intros, you need to make sure that the end of the intros make sense to transition to the beginning of a main loop, which means that you probably be well served to start each one of the main loops on the same chord, probably the tonic, so that it's like an anchor point. So you can go off in your composition in whatever direction you want. You always know you're going to return back to that initial maybe tonic chord. So your intros shouldn't end on a tonic, or else it'll repeat the same chord twice. So your intros are going to need to build. They need to create anticipation. They need to create rise, and then drop, like maybe hang on a 4 or 5 chord, and then drop in on the tonic on the beginning of a main loop. What if the player fails the game before the loop is over? Is it going to stop right in the middle and go to the ending? Yes. Or does it wait to finish the main loop then to play the ending? Nope. It is going to cut off immediately. So the question then is, what happens to the endings? How does the game know how to go to the endings? So the endings happen when you run out of health. And where's my video? There it goes. So there's a little health bar at the top of his head as he runs around. If he gets the health pickups, then he gets a little bit more health back. And as the game is being played, the game is constantly saying, there's another question, and it's like, am I dead yet? Have I lost all my health? Have I lost the game? And constantly the game is saying, no, 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 you're still playing, you still have health, you're still fine. And so it'll continue to choose those main ending loops. If at any point, even if it's immediately after the game starts, as soon, right here, as he loses the last bit of health, then the game says, has my health gone down to 0? And the game or the computer says has the health gone down to 0? The game says, actually, at this point, your health is 0. So what do I do now? And the game looks at the code and says, all right, at this point, it immediately cuts off the main loop, no matter, because you're never guaranteed where you're going to be in the music, and you want the ending to end immediately. So it's just going to hard cut. If it waited for the next piece of music, you could be waiting, like if it started at the beginning of an 8-bar cue, then you'd have to wait 8 bars to hear the changing of the music. So it works out very well. And it's not always like that. There's lots of different ways of approaching it, but you just lost the game, you just lost the round, you just lost the control of the player, so the music just hard cuts. So the other thing that's interesting with the endings is you just lost the game, so musically you can do some more interesting things. The endings don't connect to any other piece of music like the intros and the main loops do. So when you fall off the edge, there's like 4 seconds here or so before you respawn up at the top again, and the game starts over again, and the whole loop starts over. So with the endings, you could do things like there's still 2 bars. Where'd it go? 2-bar endings. So as soon as you lose all your health, it cuts off everything and immediately goes into one of these 3 endings. It randomly chooses one of them. The endings are meant to be the ending. They're meant to resolve the music. They can be a strong, typical resolution, or you could do things like the entire rest of the music is in a major key. You just lost in the endings, and so it could be all in minor, or it could be just completely dissonant, or everything's going along through the main piece of music at a steady clip, and the whole band just falls apart. But just kind of everything loses its tempo and groove. You could throw it out into a whole bunch of reverb or effects, or bit crush it so it all falls apart. There's just a lot of fun things that you can do with the ending cues versus what's going on, how everything with the intros and main loops have to connect. So let me play some examples here. I've kind of talked my way through a lot of this stuff. How about... let me get this loaded up here. Week 1 game composition demo. Hold on a sec. All right, let's put this up here. All right, a couple of different versions to show off here. All right, so each track is an individual student submission. Here are 9 files of a submission. We have the 3 ending cues, we have the 3 intro cues, and we have the 3 main loops. And I just kind of separate them out because we'll listen to them one at a time. We will start with the main loops. We get a sense of how everything sounds, and then we will go to the intros and endings. Let's see that this works here. There we go. All right. So, as we hear, everything is in the same key, the same tempo. There's slight changes from one to the next. Changes in the melody, changes in the rhythm, changes in the chord progression and the bass. There's no gaps in between each one of them. They seamlessly transition. There should be no kind of hiccups as it jumps from one to the next or loops around. And there's an equal mix or kind of a consistent mix across all of them. 3 intros. Again, these intros are meant to build up and kind of build energy or intensity as they head into the main loops. So, this would be intro 3 connecting to main loop 1. So it kind of builds and kind of hangs before it drops down on the 1 chord in the main loops. You might hear this cymbal crash. Watch out for things like this. Anything that will hang over the edge of a particular cue, the cymbal crash gets cut off. So what that means is either you would have to put the cymbal tail at the beginning of each one of these, or move this cymbal crash back, or just probably best not even have a cymbal crash. So watch out for anything that would tail over the edge of the next particular cue. And here are 3 endings. Now these endings are not the best example because they get cut off in the ending. They actually extend all the way through the 2 bars. These are probably, at least visually, a better example because they actually resolve to silence. They reach silence before getting cut off at the end. So you'll hear each one of these gets a little chopped off at the end. So you do not need to use the full 2 bars of the ending cues. So you can either end early in the 2 bars, like end on beat 1 of bar 2 or beat 3 of bar 2, or if you need to extend throughout the entire 2 bars, as long as the music ends within 2 bars, if you need a little bit of extra room for the tail to fade out to silence, that's perfectly fine. So again, because the ending cues don't directly connect to anything else, we can have a little bit of extra room for everything to reach silence. Here is another example. Let me know if you have any questions on the music or how it is set up. Here are 3 more main loops. Now these are all more acoustic, they're all from sample libraries, but acoustic sources. The ones later on are more synthy game sounding. All right, so we hear slight changes in each one of these as the progression changes, as the drum patterns change, the melody. One of the biggest things to avoid is repetition. The music is going to be repetitive enough already. You have 3 8-bar loops that make up a majority of the music, but having repetition in a particular 8-bar loop, like stating the same 4-bar phrase twice within an 8-bar cue, just makes it even more repetitive overall. So use that melody to create a lot of development over the course of each 8-bar phrase. 3 intros. Let's try that again. Each one of those kind of hangs there on the 5 chord before it's ready to drop back down on the 1. 3 endings. Now these are more kind of just straight ahead resolutions of the music. All right. So let me jump down here. Oops, let me mute that. And jump here. And we'll do these. Now these have a stronger kind of lead melodic line with more of a straight ahead rhythm. Oops. So strong changes in each one of those. Constant forward movement. Here are 3 intros. Each one of those builds up heading into the main loop. 3 endings. So these are a good example of sort of indicating that you've lost the game. You can hear each one of those as a sense of just kind of something's gone wrong. And one more here. All right, here's the main loop. So, strong melodic change and a good and a faster pace overall helps the energy of the game. One other good element for intros, good technique is subdividing the rhythm to build everything up. So going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 will definitely help build up that energy like this. One, two, three, four, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here in the chat. So it could be any genre you like. Yes. As long as it kind of fits the energy of the game and the kind of overall aesthetic and tone. The instrumentation and the genre are up to you. And we got 3 endings. Oops. All right. So, I guess speaking to the genre, the only thing would be like a chiptune. You do have a separate chiptune composition. Some people immediately gravitate towards chiptune sounds for game composition. You do have an entire chiptune specific composition, so you might not want to throw it all out in the first composition here. All right, so that is the parts that I wanted to introduce for 2D platformer game composition. Please let me know if you have any questions as we go forward or throughout the week as you work on that composition. What else do we have? So next here is what tunes? Next here is sound design. So let's talk about the sound effects for the game. As you might have noticed, a lot of the sound effects for this game can be done with your voice. They're what are known as vocalizations, sometimes known as efforts or exertions. Those are going to be hits, ouches, jumps in this game, and there are variations of those for the enemies and for the player character. There's also these lines of dialogue as taunts. So when you download the sound design, is it this one? No. I have it over here. When you download this assignment, week 1, sound design, you get something that looks like this. All right, you get a PDF like this, and you get all of the original sound effects. So the PDF mainly tells you how to format everything. There's a section on sourcing sound effects. So there are 2 links in here. You're probably already familiar with Westar Music. It does have a sound effects library that you can access with some great source material for this. There's also another site out there called freesound.org. Freesound is a very large crowdsourced library on the internet that is filled with tons and tons of sounds. The problem is most of them, or not most of them, a lot of them are not very good sounds, but there are some very usable sound effects in there. It's just large, and you got to search through and find what you want. So they have probably a lot of variations for what you're looking for. Or if you want to record your own sounds, or if you want to source them, you have your own sound somewhere else. And like I said, a majority of these can be done with your voice. So there's pictures and descriptions of each one of the sound effects, so you know what we're sort of referring to. And again, there is the asset list for all of the sound design. Everything, again, is going to be in 16-bit 44.1. You need to make sure that all of the files are named exactly according to the asset list. And so here is how I would suggest you approach this assignment. You have, like I mentioned earlier, when you download this, you get access to all of the original sound effects. So I would suggest that you open up a brand new blank session in Logic and import all of the sound effects into your Logic session and use these as a guide as you are building your own sound effects. Place all the files on one track. They are in all sorts of different formats. Go ahead and just convert the files. Make sure they'll just be in whatever format your session is. And then you will create a couple of blank tracks down below that as you are building your own sound effects. Then you'll probably need to spread these out a bit so that you have kind of clear place to work on all your sounds. And I'm not going to actually go through here and spread all these out. But then you will do your own sound design directly below there. You can use your use the original sound effects as a guide. Now, ultimately, you'll mute this out and you won't actually bounce this into your own custom version. But in the meantime, you can use it as a guide to know what sound it is, how loud it is, how long it is, the overall shape, like the attack and decay of the sound. You can get a reference of generally what it's supposed to sound like. And build your own versions down below. Now, I'm going to completely cheat here, and you're not going to do it this way, but just for a visualization, you would have your own, your own variations down here below. You would mute this out, and you would bounce out your version of it. It doesn't need to be exactly the same. It doesn't need to be the same length, or I mean, obviously use them as a strong guide overall, but go ahead and you can certainly create your own variation. So let me do this. Let me go through and play all of the sounds, and I'll chat about them. Get a sense of what they are. Now, I don't think I have volume control here, and this first sound can be a little bit loud, so you might want to watch out for this. But let me just go through each one of these sounds here. First one is bomb boom. This is when you get the bomb pickups and you drop the bomb and it explodes. Sounds like this. All right, this is a very long explosion. It's 7 seconds. I don't know that your explosion needs to be that long, and most of it is actually masked by the rest of the sounds in the game because it gets pretty quiet earlier in the file. But big explosion when the bombs go off. This is a bomb fuse. This is when you drop the bomb. It doesn't immediately go off. It takes about a second, and you hear the sound almost like a timer beforehand. The fuse. All right. So a second long or so sound right before the bomb goes off. Bomb pickup. This is a kind of a sound, kind of a gamey sound effect sound. It does not sound like you actually picking something up. This is also kind of loud. So this kind of arcadey sound for picking up those power-ups. Bomb set down. This is a line of dialogue.
Bombs away.
So you don't have to say exactly what they say. You could say bombs away. You don't have to say it in a British accent, or you can. You can make up your own custom lines. That's always fun to make it your own. Certainly keep it clean and family friendly overall, but have fun coming up with your own lines. Enemy death. This is when you kill one of the enemies. When you hit them with the bazooka, you hear very simple sounds. All right, 3 of those. So you just open up your microphone, hit record, and make a couple of kind of sounds. Gunshot. This is the sound when the bazooka goes off. What it does not sound like is a bazooka going off. It doesn't sound like a rocket launcher. It doesn't have this big long tail and go and kind of fire off. It's a pretty short gunshot sound. And it should be, because the first thing somebody's going to do is hit the fire button and just hit it very fast and fire off a whole bunch of these rockets. And if you had a really long sound, then it would stack up like 10 or 20 times, depending on how fast they hit it. And it would probably overload the audio and just kind of sound bad. So having a quick, sharp gunshot sound for that works very well. Here's the health pickup. Again, it is kind of a game arcadey sound. And the rest of these can be done with your voice. So 3 jumps.
Huh. Huh. Huh.
Right? Notice that's the jump up. That is not the fall down. That's not landing. The jumps are pretty big. So again, open your mic and go, huh, yeah. A couple times. Here are 3 ouches.
Oh.
This is when you get hit.
Ow. Ow.
All right. Pretty easy to do. And then taunts.
Keep it classy. Bring it on. I say, old bean.
Keep it classy. Bring it on. I say, old bean. So 3 variations. Again, come up with your own lines if you want to. You could say the exact same thing. Do it in an accent if you would like or not. Entirely up to you. But import the original sounds into Logic. Open up your microphone, record some of them. All you have to do is just hit record and go through the list and record them all up and edit them out. Most of these can be done with your voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The health pickups could be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, maybe not the bombs and the gunshot sounds. So, I don't know. 13, 14 of the sounds can be done with your voice. So, that'll create all of the music and sound effects for the game this month. Last thing here is your second game of the month, which is called Angry Box. Alright, so as you can see with that game, a different approach to the game, a different type of game requires a different approach with the music. It's much more futuristic and techy and, again, takes itself seriously and dark and there's kind of futuristic elements to it. Robots, and it's a great opportunity for music and sound design. So we'll start talking about that next week. But I definitely wanted just to throw that out there and introduce it to you. All right, well, that's certainly a lot of information for our first round. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'll stick around for a few minutes after the class, or if you want to reach out on FSO or through email with any questions that you might have. Other than that, we'll be around again on Thursday. If you want to come by with any composition or questions that you might have, let me know. So, other than that, thank you very much, and I'll see you again on Thursday.